Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan-Miller Report, Russia's Gazprom has now started supplying gas directly to the Russian-controlled rebels in East Ukraine after pro-Moscow separatist leaders cut supplies, according to the company's chief. This, as Royal Air Force jets from the UK are scrambled after Russian bombers are seen off the coast of Cornwall. Also on tonight's program, there are some signs of tension that are emerging among Islamic State militants. We'll tell you where this is happening. Mali signs a UN ceasefire to end conflict with northern rebels in their country. Here in the U.S., in oddball news, a Wisconsin mayor gets his ear bitten by the groundhog who loses a primary vote. And churches are offering drive-by ashes as an ash. If you want to drive by ashen, we'll tell you where to go on tonight's Evan-Miller Report. It's just after 1 minute after 8 in the east, 1 minute after 5 out west, and 1 a.m. in London. This is the Evan-Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. And there's Corey Evan.
All right. An Australian man held at Guantanamo is now waiting to find someone to send his medical bills to. The Border Patrol is to let drink drivers go? This sounds like a run by global socializing. Wally World's going to pay above minimum wage? Nice. For employees, I suppose. American Express loses an antitrust lawsuit to the government? I gather they'll just charge it to their corporate card. And Brian Williams' daughter comes to his defense. That's all coming up on your conservative news source starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan-Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Thursday, February the 19th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan this evening.
And it looks like we're starting to get some decent cloud cover. I read that we're supposed to get some rain on Sunday, but can use it.
Yes, absolutely. Rain here in Southern California as people get another nail-biter of a storm over on the East Coast. But weather is not all that we're talking about on tonight's Evan-Miller Report. We have a lot of news to get to tonight. And, of course, Corey will be along with the rest of the day's other news tonight coming up in just a moment, including an update on the David Hicks story that we brought to you yesterday. He will have more on that in just a couple minutes' time. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off in Ukraine tonight, where Russia's Gazprom announced today that they started supplying gas directly to the rebel-controlled area in East Ukraine. This after pro-Moscow separatist leaders said Kiev had cut supplies, according to the company's chief. From 1600 or local time or 1300 GMT on February the 19th, Gazprom is supplying gas to Ukraine, including through Pershkov and Pintova gas metering stations to an amount of 12 million cubic meters per 24 hours, said Alexei Miller, who was quoted by the RIA Novostat news agency. Proskova is on the border of Russia and the rebel-controlled Luhansk region, while Pantovo is on the border of Russia and the Donetsk region. Miller said the deliveries were being made according to the current sale and purchase contract between Gazprom and Ukraine's Nastgov Gas, without giving any details. The leader of the separatist self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, Gandhi Tuspov, confirmed to the RIA Novostat that an agreement had been reached with Russia regarding this. Resuming supplies is impossible because of an ongoing fight, which will stop repair teams from safely carrying out necessary work, the company said in a statement after Ukraine's national gas company confirmed a cutoff on gas was due to pipeline damage caused by fighting. Ukraine's pro-Russian separatists said Kiev had seized supply suddenly without warning. They said that they wanted access to Russian gas, which caused today's development in Russia's Gazprom providing gas directly to the rebels. All this happening as the UK's Royal Air Force jets were scrambled yesterday after 2 Russian military aircraft were seen off the Cornwall coast, according to the UK's Ministry of Defence. The Russian Bear bombers did not enter the sovereign airspace, the defense said. On the same day, Defense Secretary Michael Fallon warned that Russia's President Vladimir Putin posed a real and present danger to 3 Baltic states. Prime Minister David Cameron said that the Russia action should not be dignified with too much of a response. He also added, quote, "I think what this episode demonstrates is that we do have the fast jets, the pilots, and the systems in place to protect the United Kingdom. I suspect the Russians were trying to make some sort of a point." According to the BBC's political correspondent Ross Hodkins, he said the appearance of Russian aircraft near the UK coast was a show of strength from the Russians, and such incidents were carried out with a political intent because they would be reported on, as we're reporting on tonight, ladies and gentlemen. The BBC's correspondent also said it was part of a trend which had seen Russian aircraft flying close to the UK airspace. There has also been concern about similar incidents across Europe. This comes after increased concerns over Russia's involvement in Ukraine, as we reported before, and suggestions of Russian President Putin's potential future interference in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. A ceasefire deal between government and pro-Russian rebel separatists in Ukraine, as we been reporting, was reached a week ago. But as has been reported, battles around the strategic town of Delpast have seen the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops, while there was still shelling in several places in eastern Ukraine, including the region's biggest city, Donetsk, on Thursday. Stay with the Evan-Miller Report. We'll keep you up to date on the crisis going on in Ukraine in future reports on the program. And moving on and back over to the UK, where a teenager was on his way to behead a British soldier with a 12-inch knife was arrested today before he committed the crime. He has been found guilty of preparing a terrorist act. Brostham Zaramuri, 19, was also carrying a hammer and an Islamic flag when he was arrested in London in August of 2014. The court heard he had been inspired by the murder of Fusilier Lee Rigby in 2013, researched Army cadet bases, and boasted of a plot to kill soldiers. Zaramuri of Camberwell, London, will be sentenced on March the 20th of this year. He was arrested in East London about 16:30 British Standard Time back in August of last year as part of a joint police and MI5 intelligence operation. Earlier that day, police say he visited his former girlfriend, where he showed her the knife and hammer and told her he intended to attack and kill soldiers. And as ISIS tries to expand and take roots across the Middle East, it is struggling in Syria, part of its heartland, where it has stalled or even lost ground while fighting multiple enemies on several fronts. Signs of tension and power struggles are now emerging among the ranks of its foreign fighters. The extremists remain a formidable force, and the group's hold on about a third of Iraq and Syria still remains firm. But it appears to be on the defensive in Syria for the first time since it swept through the territory last year, and is suffering from months of U.S.-led coalition airstrikes and the myriad factions fighting it on the ground. This is according to U.S. officials. They are struggling with new challenges that did not exist before, said Lena Kathabal, director of the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut. Kurdish forces dealt ISIS its heaviest setback by driving it from the border town of Kobane in northern Syria last month. Since then, those forces have joined with moderate Syrian rebels to take back about 215 villages in the same area, according to Kurdish commanders and activists in the area, including the British-based monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The gains have strained supply lines between the Islamic State's group's westernmost strongholds in Aleppo province from its core territory in eastern Syria. The Kurdish rebel forces are now expected to take the fight to some of those strongholds, particularly the large towns of Minjabi and Jarbalis, as well as Tel Abyad, a border crossing with Turkey that is a major avenue for commerce for the extremists. The militants also find themselves bogged down in costly battles with the government forces of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. It is too early to call the shifts a turning point, but they represent the slow grind of the international campaign against the Islamic State group, which long seemed unconquerable, according to some, as it seized territory stretching from outside the city of Aleppo in northern Syria at one end to the outskirts of the Iraqi capital of Baghdad at the other. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I look at this report tonight with some skepticism because we, of course, had that report of that small town being taken, possibly taken last week, and that ISIS almost tried to capture U.S. soldiers, even though the Pentagon denied that report as of last week. So, ladies and gentlemen, look at this report with a grain of salt. By the way, contributions from this report was from the AP News Agency. Over to Milan, where their government has signed a ceasefire deal with rebels in a bid to end long-running unrest in the country's north. As part of a UN-sponsored peace process, both sides have agreed to an immediate cessation of hostilities. The deal was signed during talks that began in Algeria back on Monday. French and African troops intervened in Mali back in January 2013 to stop the southern advance of al-Qaeda-linked fighters in the capital, Bamako. They were eventually expelled from towns across the north, but both Nahmedeka Tarquk rebels and other Islamic groups have remained active since. The deal signed today was agreed between the Mali government and an alliance of 6 armed groups. According to the terms of the truce, both sides agreed to tackle the causes of lasting tensions in the region, the AFP news agency has reported. Rebels are seeking more autonomy for the north, a region they call Ashiswad. Mali leaders, meanwhile, have rejected autonomy but say they are willing to consider devolved local powers in some places. Over to France now, where their socialist government has survived a parliamentary confidence vote over a controversial set of labor market reforms. The motion was triggered after Prime Minister Manuel Valls forced through the changes without parliamentary approval. Socialist leaders told their MPs they would be expelled from the party if they failed to support the government. The 234 votes against the government were all well short of the number required to bring it down. Mr. Valls had deployed a rarely used constitutional provision to implement the labor market reforms, which include plans to scrap barriers in law firms and extend shop opening hours. Supporters say the measure should make it easier for young people with law qualifications to get jobs as solicitors, bailiffs, or court clerks. Mr. Valls wants the new legislation to send a message to the European Commission that his government is serious about labor market reforms. I call it a load of global socialism BS. Isn't that right, Cor?
Sounds about right. Anything that French government is doing these days, you have to look at under the microscope. Which Jay always won, obviously.
And no wonder the French bologna is smelling real bad these days.
Yeah, I used to work for hotel chains that was owned by a French company, and this sort of stuff has trickled down to American operations. I think since then, thankfully, they've sold their American operations, but I think the residue is still here.
Absolutely. Well, that is some of the latest going on internationally at this particular moment. I'll be back in a moment. Talk about a prominent U.S. rabbi who has pleaded guilty to 52 counts of voyeurism. You may have never heard that word. We'll explain that in just a moment as part of some of the day's other news going on across the nation. But first, we get an update on the national news up in Los Angeles. Corey Evan has the news. Corey?
I've also got some international news, if I may put that first.
Of course.
After years being subjected to torture inside the notorious Guantanamo Bay prison, Adelaide man David Hicks wants someone to pay for his medical bills after a U.S. military court set aside his terrorism conviction, according to the Daily Mail. With his name now legally cleared, Hicks doesn't care for an apology from the federal government, insisting he is too worn out and defeated. But he does want help covering medical bills following years of torture inside the notorious military jail. A ruling by a U.S. military court.
That's baloney. It don't even make any sense.
Yeah, cry us a river. But anyway, a ruling by a U.S. military court vacated his terrorism conviction and may have brought to an end an almost decade-long legal saga but he received short shrift from current Prime Minister Tony Abbott and former leader John Howard. Hicks is relieved the ordeal is over, but says he's not angry. He won't be seeking compensation at this point, but wants help with medical expenses because his time locked up in the U.S. military jail in Cuba has led to ongoing health problems. He needs operations on his left knee, right elbow, and his back. Earlier, his father, Terry, called on the federal government to apologize to his son, but Prime Minister Tony Abbott was unsympathetic. Quote, he was up to no good on his own admission, Mr. Abbott told reporters in Washington. Asked if Australia had done enough to help Mr. Hicks, Mr. Abbott said, quote, we did what was needed. Mr. Hicks said he doesn't care about an apology, he just wants to live a normal life. It's all over with, he said. Speaking of Australia, two powerful cyclones smashed into northern Australia on Friday, with authorities ordering coastal residents to flee their homes amid warnings that the storm's violent winds and drenching rains could prove deadly. The twin storms, the cyclone sandwich by locals, struck early Friday about 1,500 miles apart. Cyclone Lam hit a sparsely populated stretch of the Northern Territory, while the more powerful and potentially dangerous Cyclone Marcia began crossing over small coastal towns along the eastern coast of Queensland state a few hours later, packing wind gusts up to 180 miles an hour. About 30,000 people living in the Queensland town of Yeppoon and surrounding areas were expected to experience the worst of the storm. More than 100 schools were closed and nearly 900 residents in low-lying areas were told to evacuate. No immediate damage had been reported, but officials pleaded with hardened Queensland residents, no stranger to violent cyclones, to take the storm seriously. A cyclone of similar strength, Yazi, hit the state in 2011, destroying scores of homes but causing no deaths. The Bureau of Meteorology warned that Marcia had a very destructive core and had intensified rapidly and was likely to cause flooding. In the Northern Territory, Cyclone Lam struck a remote stretch of coast, tearing up trees and downing power lines, but causing no major damage as it weakened and moved further inland. No injuries had been reported. And forgive me for using a Brady Bunch joke, but Marcia. I'm sorry, I just had to get that out there.
I
was just saying, Marcia.
Oh, you played the Parent Trap little card. I was just...
No. The Brady Bunch.
Oh.
Get your references right, man.
Hey, you're the entertainment
we try to take the news seriously.
I cover the international news around this joint. You cover the entertainment stuff.
I thought you'd watched that episode, but never mind.
Marcia. In this case, I say Corey.
Yes.
I'm used to seeing
back to the U.S.
I'm used to seeing the older version of the Parent Trap. That's what I thought you were referring to. But excuse me.
Nope, you got it wrong. But back to serious news. Attorneys for the accused Boston Marathon bomber on Thursday asked a U.S. appellate panel to override a federal judge and order his trial moved out of the city, saying an impartial jury could not be seated so close to the site of the 2013 attack. This from Reuters. U.S. District Judge George O'Toole has 3 times rejected pleas by Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's lawyers to move the trial out of the city where the bombing killed 3 people and injured 264. Thousands of Boston area residents were crowded around the race's finish line when twin bombs went off on April 15th that year, and hundreds of thousands were ordered to remain in their homes 4 days later while police conducted a massive manhunt for Tsarnaev. That degree of personal connection to the incident will make it very difficult to impanel an impartial jury in Boston, said Judith Misner, representing Tsarnaev. Assistant U.S. Attorney William Weinreb noted that jury selection, which began early last month, has already identified 61 people who could serve on the jury through the in-person questioning process known as voir dire. Weinreb said, quote, the voir dire process is working. Really? Anyway, it has also turned up some potential candidates with strongly held presumptions on Tsarnaev's guilt, said appellate judge Juan Torella. He noted that several of the more than 1,350 potential jurors stated on their questionnaires that there was no sense in having a trial as they believed Tsarnaev was guilty. Others went even further. One rep countered that sort of statement was not typical of potential jurors' responses and made it easy to identify those who were unable to keep an open mind and thus unfit to serve on the jury. The appellate panel did not make an immediate decision on the request. Tsarnaev could face the death penalty if convicted, a fact that also complicated jury selection. Massachusetts does not allow for capital punishment, and many of the more than 200 candidates who have been questioned in recent weeks have said they would have a hard time voting to execute someone. Also from Reuters, the complex design of endoscopes that have been linked to a superbug outbreak at UCLA Health System in California may hinder proper cleaning, the U.S. FDA warned on Thursday. The hospital system said several patients were infected with a potentially deadly drug-resistant strain of bacteria, and more than 100 may have been exposed to it between October and January. The bug may have contributed to the death of 2 patients, UCLA said. The FDA said it wanted to raise awareness among healthcare professionals that the complex design of the devices, flexible tubes are threaded through the mouth, throat, and stomach to drain fluids from blocked pancreatic and biliary ducts, is associated with the risk of multi-drug-resistant infections, even when a manufacturer's cleaning instructions are followed correctly. Makers of the devices, known as duodenoscopes, I think it's pronounced, include Olympus Corp, Fujifilm Holdings, and Pentax Medical. Leslie Wooldridge, a spokeswoman for the FDA, said the agency has been actively working with federal partners, manufacturers, and other stakeholders to better understand the issues that contribute to the infections and what can be done to mitigate them.
Sounds like BS to me.
Yes, the Black Death is back, ladies and gentlemen. Put on your hazmat suits. And finally, the U.S. Postal Service and a major union began contract talks Thursday as the agency continued to face huge financial losses, according to the AP.
Higher stamps, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to receive a package, you better expect to pay more.
Yes, absolutely. And no wonder they, in my little neighborhood, have moved all the postal boxes to one central place to save gas. The Postal Service's current contract with the American Postal Workers Union expires May 20th. The agency has proposed such cost-cutting moves as ending Saturday mail, which Jay is okay with, and I would be remotely unaffected, but at any rate. Also, only to have them turned aside by Congress, of course. The union has proposed that postal customers be able to set up accounts where they could get checks, cash, and pay bills. Post offices offered some banking services until 1967. The Postal Service reported a 4.3% increase in operating revenue in October to December of this past year, but a net loss of $754 million, much of it due to the requirement that it pre-fund retiree health benefits. Postmaster General Megan Brennan said both sides share the goal of negotiating a contract that enhances, quote, our ability to serve our customers and is fair to postal employees. Brennan took over the job on the 1st of this month. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. But anything that involves unions, these days, I think it's going to be sort of a stalemate, as the grocery workers' unions in much of the country have come to realize, because, as I noted last year, the grocery workers' union in California at least voted on new contracts, and it looked like there was a lot of compromise in there. So it's going to be interesting to see if the postal workers fare any better.
It is the calm before the storm. So we will see what happens. It's going to be a big fight when the grocery unions get together here in the state of California and pretty much across the nation and fight in the next year and a half or so on that.
Sounds like a food fight to me.
I know. Better get the hazmat suits on. You might get some Chinese food thrown in your face.
Or some chocolate rain.
Ooh, see, there you go. They're already throwing the chocolate references out there. Some people might get offended, but hey, get over it. You're listening to the Evan-Miller
Exactly.
Report. We have a little bit of gravitas on this broadcast. And one final note on the Postal Workers Union story there, Corey. You know, it's a good thing we're getting rid of Saturday mail. You know why?
Why?
That means no more teenage boys have to see see those bikini-clad women walking out to the mailbox, trying to reach into the mailbox to release out for all the junk mail and bikini-clad ads in Sports Illustrated. Get it?
I thought that was the old grannies in the Imumu, the horrible ones, the ones that don't look good. I mean, some grandmas that dress decently, but there are others that jump, and those are the ones that we don't need to see.
And to steal a quote from a cartoon show, that's why teenage boys are screaming, "Hello, nurse!"
Yes, and I'm going to need a nurse after this one.
It's why Corey goes and gets his nurse. We're going to go ahead and take an ad break while he goes and sees his girlfriend, Maria. But when we come back on tonight's program, an MI5 agent has given evidence in shoulder-length wig and glasses in a trial of a man accused of involvement in a transatlantic attack plot. We have that story. A prominent U.S. rabbi has pleaded guilty to 52 counts of voyeurism after secretly filming women in his congregational ritual baths. We'll give you the oddballs on that story. And which senator is facing pressure to run for Senate re-election? We have all those stories and more. Plus, Corey's back from his girlfriend Maria. What's coming up in business?
Her name's Jennifer. Thank you very much. Greece is trying to show an open mind about debt negotiations. Not. Walmart looks to become not the most hated retailer in America by putting their money where their workers' mouths are. And not another win for the government. Oh, well, time to grab the American Express charge card. That's all coming up on the Evan-Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
Is radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog at Now back to the Sackhead.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
St. Jude is leading the way childhood cancer is treated and defeated in communities across America.
And no family receives a bill from St. Jude, not for treatment, travel, housing, or food.
So parents at St. Jude can focus on what matters most, helping their child live.
Give thanks.
Give thanks.
Give thanks for the healthy kids in your life and give to those who are not. Go to stjude.org or shop wherever you see the St. Jude logo.
Let's get back to the Evan-Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome back to the Evan-Miller Report on this Thursday, February the 19th. I'm Jason Miller.
And I'm Corey Evan. Hey, stay tuned for our continuing battle against global socialism. You're not going to want to miss these stories about drink driving at the border and a gay marriage couple getting in order.
Looking forward to that, as always, Corey. But first, an MI5 agent has given evidence in a shoulder-length wig and glasses in the trial of a man accused of involvement in a transatlantic attack plot. Abid Nasir, 28, has denied involvement in an al-Qaeda conspiracy to attack Manchester in the UK and New York here in the US. The court in New York heard that Agent 1603 of MI5 was spying on Abdir Nasir in the weeks before his arrest back in 2009. His evidence was recorded last month and played in court in Brooklyn, New York, as part of the prosecution's case. The MI5 spy said he followed Abdir Nasir onto a coach and then observed him watching a video of the 9/11 attacks on his mobile phone. Other British spies are expected to be called to give evidence next week. All have been told they can wear wigs and makeup in an attempt to conceal their identities. Mr. Nasir is accused of being part of an international al-Qaeda plot to try to recreate the devastation of the September 11th attacks. Prosecutors allege Mr. Nasir was part of a conspiracy planning bomb attacks in multiple places, including, as we mentioned, Manchester in the UK and New York's subway system. They claim he was planning a suicide bomb attack at the Armadale Center in Manchester when he was arrested in April 2009. He denies all the charges he faces and is representing himself at the trial. Well, at least that's good news there, Cor. At least he isn't calling you to become his lawyer.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that case if he paid me $1 million.
And I wouldn't be touching you with a 10-foot pole if you took that $1 million and took it over to your girlfriend, Marcia.
Jennifer
with the middle name Marcia. J.M. fits.
Yeah, maybe you ought to see her driver's license one of these times. But anyway.
And ladies and gentlemen, it's Joker Thursday today. If you're just wondering what's going on, I got a little over on the Sackheads radio show last night, so I'm a little giddy today. So
we're gonna keep that going as long as possible.
I'm having a little fun at your expense, Corey. I hope people enjoy it, because this next story may not be so enjoyable. A prominent U.S. rabbi has pleaded guilty to 52 counts of voyeurism after secretly filming women in his congregation's ritual baths. Barry Friedel.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah. See, even Corey's shocked by this story. Let's get some details to the audience. Barry Frigel, who is 63, may have recorded as many as 150 women in the changing area at his Orthodox synagogue in Washington, D.C. The women were disrobing for the ritual Jewish bath known as mikvah. He has confessed to recording at least 52 nude or partially nude women. Prosecutors say he should be jailed. They say the actual number of women filmed is likely to have been much higher. Before his arrest back in October of last year, Barry Friedel was a rabbi at the Kester Israeli Synagogue in the Georgetown area in the capital for more than 25 years. He was arrested after a person associated with the synagogue's baths, the National Capital Mikvah, discovered the hidden camera. The rabbi has now been fired from the synagogue, which occupies a prime spot in a wealthy area of D.C., and has numbered Treasury Secretary Jack Glue and ex-Senator Joseph Lieberman among its congregants. Court documents have revealed that Friedel set up a recording device hidden within a digital clock radio in the changing and shower area. He was initially charged with 6 counts of voyeurism, but a search of his home uncovered additional materials on other media storage devices. Prosecutors have determined that more women had been taped and increased the charges. Each misdemeanor charge is punishable up to a year in jail, and prosecutors say they would seek a prison sentence. We'll be seeking a prison sentence that reflects the gravity of this disturbing assault on the privacy and dignity so many victims, said U.S. Attorney Ronald Machen. A closed-door meeting for the victims was last week told that Friedel had taped more than 150 women through a statute of limitations prevented them from charging him with many of the tapings.
And on to the markets. The Dow looks a bit frozen at down 44 points at 17,985. The NASDAQ up 18 points, going the opposite way at 49.24. They must have the heater on. And the S&P 500, room temperature minus 2 points equals 2,097. Rather tepid report.
Must be a great
Germany
load for Marcia.
Yeah. Right. Whatever. Germany shocked Europe watchers Thursday after it rejected a request from Greece to extend its Eurozone loan program by 6 months, a day before the deadline. The Greek government submitted a letter early Thursday to the finance ministers of the Eurozone, the Eurogroup, requesting a 6-month assistance package rather than an extension of the bailout, which would come with austerity and reform conditions. Quote, in truth, it goes into the direction of bridge financing without fulfilling the demands of the program. The letter does not meet the criteria agreed by the Eurogroup on Monday, German Finance Ministry spokesman Martin Jager said in a statement. As its biggest economy and therefore contributes the most to any financial aid, Germany is the 19-country Eurozone's most powerful member. There is also very little love between the fiscally disciplined Berlin and anti-austerity Athens. In a bid to play down the rebuttal, Greece said it was up to the Eurogroup to make a decision on the request, implying that Germany's rejection on its own was not enough to throw the extension. An emergency Eurogroup meeting is now scheduled for 2 p.m. Friday, local time, to discuss the conditions and extension of Greece's loan and bailout. It is also the deadline for Greece to apply for an extension of the bailout program. German Chancellor Merkel and French President Hollande are also set. Greece is required to pay 595 million euros of bond interest to its Eurozone creditors on the 24th. There's no new agreement in place. The country will start to run out of money to pay down its debt, raising the specter of a default and a possible exit from the Eurozone. Greece's banks could reach the limit of its emergency liquidity pool from the ECB, and another renewal will be required. Also, the European Union's Temporary Crisis Fund, the European Financial Stability Facility, expires on Saturday the 28th. Significant Greek payments to the IMF are due in March. Back home in the U.S., it's a little bit rosier. The NASDAQ rose for a 7th straight day, the longest winning streak in a year, as Priceline Group led a rally in internet stocks. Priceline climbed 8.5% after posting better than estimated fourth quarter earnings. Walmart lost 3.2% after saying wage increases and other spending initiatives will boost expenses. Speaking of which, they are raising wages for some 500,000 hourly employees because worker pride in the company is vital to running a good retail business. That's what CEO Doug McMillon told CNBC today. Quote, we make wage adjustments all the time. We just decided this is a really good moment to be more bold, McMillon said in a Squawk Alley interview. Right now, we want to make sure everybody is crystal clear how vital our store experience is to our future, unquote. McMillon spoke on CNBC after Walmart announced that hourly workers will earn at least $1.75 above the current federal minimum wage, or $9 an hour, starting in April. By next February, they will earn at least $10 an hour. McMillon said Walmart's trying to position itself ahead of the market in order to retain the best talent available.
And it looks like we have lost Corey Evan in the transition of things, so hopefully he can call back into the program here. We don't know what happened there here on the program, but if Corey Evan does get back in here, we will, of course, bring him back. And looks like that's him, right on cue.
Darn it.
Did you
I
tick
think
off
Marsha
your girlfriend
got
Marcia
mad.
again?
Now you've got me calling her Marsha. This is great. Yeah. I was just saying that because Walmart is the nation's largest private employer, at least according to National Employment Law Project's Sadie Jipperslasky, I don't know how to pronounce that name, she says that Walmart has a real obligation to do better than they have been in the past. And to me, it does seem like they're trying to shake their reputation of being the nation's most hated retailer, but at least their workers will be slightly better paid in this case. But will it affect prices? That's the question that has yet to be answered. Walmart's announcement should ease customer complaints, Deutsche Bank analyst Paul Trussell told CNBC. The retailer said spending on wage and training initiatives as well as incremental investments in e-commerce would cost the equivalent of 26 to 29 cents a share. They released quarterly results reporting earnings that beat forecasts, though revenues fell short. Its stock price was down 3% Thursday afternoon. It also reported earnings of $1.61 a share compared with $1.60 a share last year. Revenue is up by $2 billion from a year ago. So let us hope that by raising their employees' wages, they don't end up raising prices and thus risk that increase in revenue. Right, that's what I've got for you in business, Jay. And might I say, this is going to make things interesting over at Wally World, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially when you take your girlfriend Marcia over for shopping with the new wedding stuff.
Jennifer, please forgive him, for he knows not what he does. Right, time to move on to that ever so interesting segment we like to call our continuing battle against global socialism. The Obama administration is telling Customs and Border Protection agents in a busy stretch of the U.S.-Mexico crossing that they don't have to arrest intoxicated drivers, sparking backlash from advocacy groups and others. According to Fox News, the Department of Homeland Security issued the advisory, which informs agents in the Tucson, Arizona sector that they have three options to use if they encounter suspected drink drivers: either detain them at the request of local law enforcement, detain them without the involvement of other agencies, or let them go. In stark terms, the bulletin explains which option puts the officers at greatest risk of being sued. The bulletin warns the first option poses the greatest threat. Instead, the advisory obtained by conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch highlights the third option, letting them go on their way. The advisory makes clear agents have no legal obligation to intervene in state crimes, and that was the third option, quote, "There is generally no liability that will attach to the agent or agency for failing to act in the situation," unquote. The bulletin, reviewed by Fox News, goes so far as to say agents wouldn't be liable if they allow the driver to continue down the road and they kill someone. Jessica Vaughn, a policy director for the Center for Immigration Studies, said Tuesday the advisory is consistent with the administration's long-held strategy of trying to edge federal agents' close cooperation with state and local law enforcement, which has led to deportation. Yes, and in Texas, according to Reuters, a Texas county issued a marriage license to a same-sex couple on Thursday, the first legal certification for a gay couple in the state since its voters about a decade ago approved a measure defining marriage as only between a man and a woman. A Travis County clerk said the marriage license was given to just one couple, Sarah Goodfriend and Suzanne Bryant, after a court order earlier in the day in the county, home to the state capital of Austin, is not planning to issue more licenses to same-sex couples. Legal experts say there was at least one case of a marriage between a same-sex couple in the early 70s, and none since the voter-approved constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage went into effect. But I have yet to see any proof that there won't be more. At least that's this newsman's opinion. So, how many foreign drink driving accidents will it take to wake up Obama's minions? How many more blows must non-gay marriage take? And how many Kmart's will announce their grand closings before the end of this one line? Stay tuned for developments.
That's after Corey's wedding with Marcia.
Funny, Jay, as ever. Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism. And Jay, you've got a couple of stories in odd news, haven't you?
Yes, I do, and those oddball news stories are coming up in just a moment here. But first, a little D.C. news to get out of the way. Determined to protect their new Senate majority, Republican officials are lobbying Florida Senator Marco Rubio heavily on seeking re-election to Congress next year, even though he says he'll forego that campaign if he makes an expected bid for the White House in the 2016 presidential elections. Officials familiar with the effort say that recruiting Rubio to seek re-election is a top priority at the National Republican Senatorial Committee. According to Senator Roger Wicker, Republican from Mississippi and chairman of the organization, he said recently he hopes Rubio would be a candidate for a second term, although he did not confirm that approaches had been made to the senator or his close aides. The official spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. Republicans who captured a majority last fall must defend 24 out of 34 seats on the ballot in 2016. With Rubio on the ticket, party officials calculate their chances of holding his Senate seat will be far greater than if he steps aside, given his proven fundraising and vote-getting ability. And that's your D.C. news for tonight. Now over to a segment that me and Corey love to call Oddball News!
Yes!
All right, well, I'll start off with the oddball news tonight. A Wisconsin mayor who capitulated to internet fame after he was banned on the air during a Groundhog Day event earlier in February has lost his seat in a primary election. John Farad, who was appointed mayor of Sun Prairie back in 2014, finished third among three candidates in Tuesday's primary in the Madison, Wisconsin suburb. He could not be reached immediately for comment on Wednesday because he is currently going out with the Groundhog's girlfriend, also named Marcia.
Oh, brother, you're just getting ridiculous now.
Jimmy the Groundhog earlier this year bit Fraud's left ear as an assistant left the rodent up toward the mayor during a Groundhog Day celebration on February 2nd. By tradition, the groundhog is supposed to whisper a prediction that only the mayor can understand. And we wonder why the groundhog's whispering, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia.
The Brady Crunch, the Brady Crunch. That's the way we all became part of the Brady Crunch.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of crunch, a tuna fisherman has been accused of shooting at pilot whales from his vessel with a World War II era rifle. Daniel Archibald surrendered Thursday to face the charges and was released on $10,000 unsecured bond. Archibald, who's from Cape May, widely considered America's oldest seaside resort, used a Mosin Nagant rifle to shoot a pilot whale from the vessel. Captain Bob, the U.S. Attorney's Office for New Jersey, said a whale was shot with a bullet from such a rifle and was beached and then died in Allenhurst, more than 100 miles northeast of Cape Cod, back in September 2011. Authorities said Archibald told them that he had sprayed fire at pilot whales, which are extremely social animals, about a month earlier to chase them away from his vessel's fishing lines. Archibald's lawyer, Bill Hughes, has said he has doubts about the case. Police in Houston say a teen took a video of himself singing to a rap song while driving a song. I bet the rap song was, "When am I gonna marry Marcia? When am I gonna marry Marcia?" Kenneth Davis is charged with unauthorized use of a motor vehicle and burglary of a motor vehicle. According to television station KHOU-TV, report that La Porte police tried to pull over three pickup trucks Monday, driving without their lights on. Two of the drivers fled. Authorities then located one of the trucks after it was abandoned. That eventually led them to Davis. His phone had one video of him driving a car and singing along to the Drake song, "How About Now?" Police say the phone also linked him to other car thefts. He's being held on $12,000 bond. Online records did not list an attorney for Davis, which is not going by the name of Marcia as of yet.
Her name is Jennifer. Good grief.
Whenever I have a chance to do a pot roast, ladies and gentlemen, it's a full-blown pot roast. I'm enjoying it tonight.
Yes, and it's going to be rebroadcast on Comedy Central later tonight.
Yes, following Jimmy Kimmel's roast of Corey Evan. Film that.
We joke. But I've actually got a bit of news. Oh, you got one more?
And final story before I send it over to Corey to wrap up today's Oddball News. Are you too busy to stop in for Ash Wednesday service? Well, no problem. Some churches are offering drive-by ashes. Clergy at Advert Evangelical Lutheran Church in Upper Arlington, Ohio, applied ash to the foreheads of anyone who stopped in the parking lot of the church for 2 hours on Wednesday. It's the first time the church offered the drive-by service, said Reverend Aaron Laney. The congregation supported it, he told the Columbus Dispatch, although some comments on Facebook criticized him for cheapening the observance that marks the beginning of Lent for Christians. Laney reasoned that it could be a first step back for some people who haven't been to church in years. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have problems with your girlfriend Marcia and want to try to find God again, go for a run-by ashing over in Ohio and stop by the Alvildon Evangelical Lutheran Church in Upper Arlington in Ohio and tell them Jason Miller sent you because Marcia doesn't give a damn.
Oh, brother. I'm going to play this back for Jennifer later. Anyway.
You have my full permission to. And Corey wraps up the oddball news.
Yes. Quote, this cold weather is probably the work of a witch. Usually that's something that comes out of the mouth of someone who doesn't understand weather, but it's kind of how the police department in Harlem, Kentucky jokingly explained the frigid temperatures. And they're not letting Frozen's Queen Elsa get away with this devil stuff. No, sir. They're trying to arrest her. Quote, all points bulletin, I can't even talk, my tongue is broken. That's what they wrote on their Facebook page. Quote, HPD has issued an arrest warrant for Queen Elsa of Arendelle. Suspect is a...
Folks, it looks like we lost Corey Evan again tonight. My goodness. I don't know what's going on with that line up there in Los Angeles. It may be his girlfriend, Marcia. We don't know at this point. But that's it for the Oddball News segment tonight. We hope you enjoyed it. And pardon the comedy tonight. I just felt in the mood tonight. And looks like we do have Corey Evan back here. So let's bring him back. And Corey, let's go ahead and just start off with tonight's lawsuits across America due to time constraints. And we can post that story about Elsa online. So ladies and gentlemen, stand by. It's now time for tonight's lawsuits across America.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Yeah. Sit. Let's get going on this. American Express, according to Bloomberg, fell in New York after a judge ruled that the company violated antitrust law with its policy barring merchants from asking customers to use other forms of payment. The lender failed to show that its so-called non-discrimination provisions imposed on merchants to agree to accept its cards don't harm competition, according to Judge Nicholas Garufas. That's his name. The U.S. Justice Department victory in its lawsuit against the credit card company might give merchants more leverage in their efforts to cut the costs, which are largely hidden from consumers, but of course show up on the stock market. An attorney for the youth hockey organization being accused in a lawsuit of unethical business practices by an ice skating facility says the suit was unfounded, according to NJ.com out of Franklin, New Jersey, and retaliation for an earlier lawsuit the hockey organization filed against the ice rink. James W. Boyan III, a Hackensack...
Bummer, ladies and gentlemen. I think we broke a fuse here in the old Evan-Miller Report studios here. Master Computer, what's going on?
This is not my fault. This was not built to...
All right, what happened, Master Computer? Are you okay?
This is not my fault. This was not built to code.
Right.
Yeah, I think Corey blew a circuit out of his line in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So on that note, Corey, let's go ahead and post those lawsuits across America online, and let's get the entertainment report, because I think we have Hurricane Marcia flying through the studio at this point.
I think that's exactly what happened, Jake. Anyway, in entertainment, former rap mogul Mariah Daisuke Knight was taken by ambulance today from an LA courthouse for an undisclosed medical issue, according to Fox News. It was the second time in recent weeks that Knight has been taken to a hospital as he faces murder and robbery charges in separate cases. Knight had been scheduled to appear Thursday for arraignment on a criminal threats charge, but he never made it to the courtroom. His attorney, David Kenner, said bailiffs and a judicial officer told him Knight had stomach issues and was taken for an evaluation before Kenner had a chance to see him. Yes, he is charged with killing 55-year-old Terry Carter in the parking lot of a Compton burger stand in late January and seriously injuring another man. He remains jailed without bail in that case, and the judge has refused to allow Knight's personal physician to evaluate him in jail. And finally, before I wrap this up, one that I brought you, that I was telling you about at the start of the show, Allison Williams has broken her silence about Brian Williams' 6-month suspension from NBC News. During a Q&A session with Seth Meyers at 92Y in New York City Wednesday, the Girls actress defended her father and assured the audience the 55-year-old journalist will work hard to regain viewers' trust. And she goes on to say that in a very, very long statement describing it as a really hard time. And she's also been very lucky counting her blessings. She's got her health. They've got each other. It's been great. Blah, 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 blah. In case you want to see the whole thing she said to Seth Meyers, which I'm surprised Seth decided to let her go on and on and on like this. But anyway, I'll put that as well on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan-Miller Report. And on that note, that is your entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then, I'm Corey Evans, sending it back up to Jason Miller in Los Angeles.
I see why you did that.
San Diego, excuse me.
See? Reverse regions there. Nope, I'm out of San Diego, and we're going to continue to stay classy over here in San Diego here. That's Corey Evan. I'm Jason Miller. And for Corey Evan and his girlfriend Marcia, I'm Jason Miller. Thank you for listening to us tonight.
You're a great ball of fire tonight.
Yes, the whole show is falling apart tonight. Coming up next, the Exceptional Conservative Show as he simulcasts with the Underground Professor. Tonight, Dr. Michael E. Jones here on the SHR Media Network. Again, for all of us here at SHR, we wish you a good night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. First up, the Liz Laura Show tomorrow, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, and followed by us at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific with the Evan-Miller Report. Good night, everybody.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.